I decided that I am going to do reviews of my tarot decks because they end up being reference material for me. And in many ways, I think that this is a kind of, how would I say, like, this is like an advertisement for my practice and how much I want you to be a part of it. I'm really interested in all the ways in which we get messages from the universe, and these symbols of the tarot is just one example of this. And there's the traditional deck that we all know and maybe love or not, I don't know, but I feel confident in the importance of utilizing the imagery that many others employ to communicate the message, particularly since we're living in such a simultaneously different and sympathetic age. Like, I can't remember what year the Rider-Waite death came on the scene. I know it was the turn of the century, 19 early 1900s, I think. I say that with a lot of confidence, but I don't know. Um, I will probably pop it in there some kind of way, but I know that the life is very different from that period into now, but the human beings that are asking for guidance, that is actually very much the same. So I utilize the more contemporary decks, the decks that are being published, and now it's at such a clip because of, I think everybody is looking for different ways of understanding their world, their life, the energies that are around them, that people are expanding their consciousness through the visual languages because of the internet. Honestly, I think that we see so much stuff that our our alphabet for these this visual language is specific to this time, and I wanted to have that inform some of the older forms because almost always I use a traditional deck for my readings that I get a chance to share with people. And I get a lot out of that. I get a lot out of those old Christian and if we go back and back and back, the ancient Egyptian symbols, but sometimes they can be a little bit too obscure for a lot of people who aren't like into it. And so these contemporary decks give me a context that I can use for the seekers that share their readings with me. So I just got Cosmic Cunt Tarot. I got this from a friend of mine. I will find out where she purchased this from, but I'm sure you could get it from Amazon. But I know she got it from an independent bookseller in Atlanta, so I want to be able to give them a shout out. So I'll link all the stuff in the description box or whatever platform that I decide to share this with, but you'll know where she got this from because this is hilarious. Cosmic Cunt by Samantha West, uh, published by Rockpool. I've never heard of Rockpool, but again, I'm going to try to be as specific as possible with all the details of the decks themselves. I've got my incense going. I've got my candle, which is pink because it's love. I've also got my rose quartz sage, which I already lit it, but I just like to have this stuff around when I usually do a reading, when I'm exploring the decks anyway. So let's see if I can get this right. Yep, and I'm still recording. So this is my first time doing this, so I am hopeful that it will turn out well. So most of these decks have a little book that goes with it, and you can see that it does. It has a little book. And I don't really care for, like, some of the books are wonderful because the artists that are creating the deck, or the practitioner that's creating the deck, might be a good writer. And sometimes the creators of the decks are much more adept as visual artists. So sometimes those two things are present in the same person, but most of the time it's not. There is one deck that I feel is very connected to that. Like, there's a deck called Santa Muerte, I believe, that I I'm pretty sure that the illustrator of the cards and also the writer of the explanations of each card are the same person. Ooh, sorry. It's I'm recording for the first time, so I don't know. I want to keep checking to make sure that it's okay. Anyway, sometimes they're the same person, and like with the Rider-Waite deck, there was the Golden Dawn Society. I will put all of that history in there, just a little snippet. Actually, I think it still might be there at the Whitney. There is a show with some of the original drawings, I believe. I didn't get a chance to see it, or maybe it's already passed when I was last in New York. But again, I will make sure to indicate those links in the description box. But in this case, in the Cosmic Cunt case, it's the images are much more compelling than the written descriptions, and that's okay. That's okay. Most of the time, I would suggest buying a tarot deck. It's okay if you're beguiled by the imagery, because that's really what you're going to be reading. And the interpretation is about how you combine those symbols. So it's okay that this is kind of a throwaway. I should say it like that, but it's true. So the other thing that I tend to pay attention to is the kind of card field. Now, I have on these finger cots and gloves because I just think that it looks cool in my presentation. But immediately, I can tell that these are going to be a travel deck. They fit really nicely into my palm, and I really appreciate that. And they have these nice little round edges. And I have these finger cots on just so I can wear these gloves, my Bridgerton gloves. One of my Bridgerton gloves, because I got quite a bit. And I think I'm going to always have gloves on for these reviews because it doesn't matter what I look like. But so I can shuffle them. But I also shuffle them with just my bare hands, which is what I would normally do. A lot of times when I'm transferring my energy directly to this, things flip, and I use that in my readings, and I didn't want that to necessarily happen, so hence the rubber cots. But yeah, they have a really nice feel to them. I really like the feel. I think that, sometimes, the imagery is great, but they're kind of like school clothes. Like, if you really want to play, they're not, like, some decks are just not for playing. Like, they are actually, and this is what I think I'm going to incorporate into my readings now, is that I'm going to use the traditional deck to do the reading, but depending on what came out in the reading, there might be imagery that is more resonant for the seeker based on the collection that I have and that is still growing. So this was gifted to me. And then some places I've traveled and I've come across a deck, and it's not something that I will use. Sometimes they're like books, like I'll have them for a couple of months before I even break them out. But like this gift, this was just so hilarious. I would definitely use this as a travel deck because of its size, and the imagery is really cute, and yeah, the imagery is really cute and non-threatening. If I'm traveling, I want to utilize this as a way to communicate with people who may not be as into this, and yeah, it'd be fun. And it shuffles really nicely. Like the actual and also the texture of the paper is helpful in this regard. So I like the feel of the paper of the cards. I love this neon, like the way that looks. It looks really cool to me. And also the images are very like I said, non-threatening, and I just love them. I love them. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I've gotten the book that I'm not as into. It's very short explanations, and it's not giving me necessarily anything new to my practice, but the images are giving me something new to my practice. So I'm going to give an overview of first my favorite of the major arcana. Now, with the major arcana, keep in mind that these are longer arcs of time. These are bigger themes. The minor arcana tends to be contemporary moments, energies that are much shorter duration. In the traditional deck, the minor arcana has a number of what are commonly referred to as stage cards. So Pamela Smith was a set designer, I found out, worked in the theater a lot. And so there are some cards that look like there is a horizontal line at the bottom that it looks like a stage. And so I like when those cards come up because it's a reminder that all of this, we're just playing a role. And the thing about roles is that you can shift your delivery, you can opt out of it, you can use an understudy. So something about that feels appealing to me. So I'm going to go over my favorite of the major arcana in this deck. And I think what I'm going to start doing is I'm always going to do the first card and the last card for sure. So we have the Fool. I think I love how it retains the traditional elements of the traditional deck. So the traditional deck has a dog and as the companion to the Fool. And I love the idea of this companion, that is something that feels important in a fool's journey, that there is something that's a part of making this step into another portal. And I love the scene of this cosmos, but that there's this portal. I'm just into that altogether. The notion of a portal, the notion of our existence being a doorway into another dimension. And I like that she, the alien, I mean, first of all, her outfit's really cute. I would totally wear an outfit like that. If you know me, you know that I'm a love a full party skirt with these like little lantern sleeves that are kind of like leg of mutton sleeves. And then these booties, I mean, I'm into it. Shit, I would even get a wig that looked like that. I need to find a wig that looks like that. That's a party outfit. Anyway, so obviously I like to get fashion advice from my tarot, but it retains enough of the traditional imagery that feels really important to the original tarot deck that we all know. and then it riffs on it. We'll do the last one too. I I think, like I said, I think I'm gonna start off with the 0 and the 21. 21 is a great number because 1 plus 2 equals 3, and 3 is this kind of elemental number of creativity. It's also connected to the Empress. Empress is 3. So Empress is this fecund woman on a chaise lounge with lushness and stars and just receptive energy. But I like this representation of the world because of the fact that it encompasses many worlds. And when we think of the world isn't a place, it's a concept, it's a dimension. And I like that there is this idea that's represented visually of many worlds in this. It also kind of reminds me of the Little Prince book, how he kind of existed on this little tiny planet, but there was a lot of love and care involved in that whole story. So when whether or not this artist was intentionally meaning to indicate the Little Prince, I like where it takes me, and so that I'm going to probably incorporate that into a reading dependent on where the world is, which is one of the reasons why I explore different decks, because certain imagery can be really intimidating and it can feel or look overwhelmingly negative, because there's no negative or positive in the tarot. It's just a frequency that you can turn down or turn up. At least that's how I approach it. And I like that when there is a more negative image, that I have these kinds of reference materials of other decks to introduce an idea that when that hardcore card comes up in a space that is overwhelmingly positive, I know how to read that in a different kind of way. So we have one of my favorite cards, which is the Magician. And I freaking love the way this illustrator did the Magician, because one of the things that is indicated in the Magician is this concept of as above, so below. There are a couple of things that are really consistent, or should be consistent across the board for the Magician, and that is that concept of so above, so below, so within, so without, this duality of the one, that it is encompassing in the all. And the other thing that it really, I think, should emphasize is it should showcase the tools or the elements or the suits of the tarot. It should have that in there, because one of the things that I learn in my practice of tarot is that we have all the tools. We come to the planet, we come to this dimension with all the tools, and the imprisonment of a human experience is a distraction to that reality. That we have everything that we need to get us out of an uncomfortable situation, and we can create a more beneficial one as well. And so if we look at this card, we've got the ray gun, which is representative of the swords or air. This is all about the mind. We have the beaker, which is the specimen. They call this, so this is ray gun, then this is specimen. This is representative of the cups or the emotions or water element. We have the discs, which is representative of coins or the material world. This is a UFO. They call them a disc. And then we've got the probe. The probe is basically dicks or dildos. So again, they were right. Don't do this unless this is not for the faint of heart. So I love this. I love this. I love the two sets of eyes. I feel like it is below, as above and below. We've got the within and without, and we've got this duality that's always inherent in any single thing. Next, we have the chariot. The chariot is always a reminder that our bodies are the vehicle for our passions, our internal investigation is housed by the vehicle of our own will. Even though the chariot is absolutely related to the sign of Cancer, that is kind of not even though, it is also representative of Cancer, that there is this shell that is a house and a body, that it is a space of residing but also moving. Like you reside in a home, but the crab shell is something that's also a vehicle. So I feel like this is not only our bodies, the chariot is not only a vehicle or a vessel to get us certain places, it's also a home. It can take us to our home. So I love this kind of idea of beaming up, that like there is a dichotomy of self, that it is also the home, but at the same time, simultaneously, the vessel. Wheel of Fortune is also another one of my favorites. Oh my God. Hanged Man. Hanged. I like a lot because I appreciate that it's the tail that's being hanged, because traditionally this is a martyr card. It's a, like, originally, or in all of the original traditional, I shouldn't say original, the traditional imagery of the hanged man, it talks about martyrdom, this person who is being punished as a righteous, it's a righteousness in the sacrifice, and that through this passion of the belief that will come to find out is true and it's right, and it's about shifting of perspectives, that this is a choice that the person, the individual who is being hanged, is making. That even though it's expressed through this martyrdom, it's a choice that was already made through the compulsion of, I don't know the word, the compulsion of their righteousness. And the fact that in this image, it's a tail, that it's connected to this person, and that there is this third eye that is open, that everything is relaxed. The situation that they put themselves in, this shifting of perspective, that there is a submission to that is in control. And I feel like that little tail gives us that imagery in such a beautiful and simple and kooky way. Death is one of my favorite cards in any deck. It just is. because it's always been so terrifying to me. The whole notion of the death card. When you see it, it's just like you don't want, like, there's a lot of fear that's involved in it. And it speaks to this unknown, that there are a lot of things that are happening. Like in the traditional card, there are, I want to say, 4 figures total. There's death, and then there are 3 figures that are at the foot of the horse that death is riding. So really it's 5 figures. There's the horse, there's death, and then there are 3 individuals: a king, an old person, and a child, I believe. I might be misremembering it, but that's okay. I like this card, one, because it is giving me very non-threatening. So when you get this card, you're not immediately going to respond viscerally. It's not going to be the roadkill as you're walking, where it, like, totally your heart starts to race and your senses are attacked. It's still death. I mean, death is walking. I like that death is walking, that we're getting the perspective of death walking forward out of the frame, but also looking back at the same time with these 3 eyes. But I like that it is replicated also in these planets and in this flower, that in spite of the death and the movement, both the past and the future, it's this transitional area that is most visible, which is what death symbolizes, that the transition is what's most visible, not the before or the after. The devil is also another one of those cards that in the major arcana that people get freaked out by. And one of the things that I learned in reviewing the traditional card is that the shackles around the necks of the Adam and Eve figures, so there's also replicated in this card, are this dyad that is being controlled by the devil. I like that. Again, very non-threatening. I had to do a little bit of shabop. We'll see if we can get this done as quickly as possible. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but we will do our best. So the devil, the thing that I appreciate about the devil in this card, but also something that is, you have to look closer at the traditional deck to get a sense of, and that is the fact that these collars are very easy to get out of. So whatever is holding you back, even if it is the devil, is something that you can choose to get out of. Another of my favorites in this deck with the major arcana is the star. The star is kind of always one of my favorite cards in general, because it is communicating a frequency of hope, that even in spite of all that might be going on, that there is a hopefulness that's a part of, that is a frequency that you need to be accessing in this moment. And I imagine that she's like this kind of like doughy star that is utilizing this pool of subconscious information to relax her through some difficult times. Okay, so I just want to say before I continue is that shout out to all of the content creators, because the process of setting all of this stuff up, this stuff is hard. Finding the right equipment that is going to match with what you're doing is no easy task. So I figured out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to set this up for the future. But moving on, we just did the star, which was for me, a great reminder of the amount of leisure and care and self-care that's required to maintain hope. This very much communicates that message to me. The moon also is a favorite in this deck. I like that it has the duality of the figures. In the traditional card, there's a wolf and a dog. So it speaks to the wild and the domesticity of our experience, that we're not just acting on animal instinct, but we also have evolved to such a space that we know we are interacting with other people, but that wildness, that unpredictability is a part of our experience too. It appears as if these figures are on a moon. And so there is a notion that now we can have access to the dark side, the part that we never see. Like, we never see the dark side of the moon. There's one side of the moon that we from Earth will never see. And so being on the moon is this exploration that is cosmic and fits into the realm of this deck, the theme of this deck, in such a wonderful way that it's one of my favorites in the deck. Speaking of moon, we got to talk about my other favorite card, which is the sun. I like this because there is a mischievous aspect to this particular sun that is a part of the self-esteem that is indicated in the traditional interpretation. There's a naked baby on a horse in the traditional deck. And if that's not mischievous, I don't know what it is. I know that as a sun, I'm dangerous, but I'm also necessary. And I think that is a big part of what the tarot reminds me of, is that all the things that I am afraid of, all the aspects of my personality that might not be as gentle as I would prefer or likable as I prefer, it's a part of the fuel that helps me realize the highest level of my lived experience. That the necessity of the sun is not negated by its confidence. In fact, the confidence in the sun coming up every day is a part of its charm, a part of its reality, a part of its necessity. So something about this really doubles down on the amount of confidence and esteem and self-esteem that is indicated with the ideal of the sun card.